Robyn's money from her house paid family debts. You get in this space with family and you're working together.
Friends, it's me, Mirab, and I welcome you all to Starspill USA for over a decade. We have watched the Brown family navigate the tangled web of plural marriage. We have witnessed their moments of joy, weddings, births, milestones, and we have endured with them the heartbreak, the bitterness, and the gradual unraveling of one's cherished bonds. But what if what we saw on screen, those carefully edited smiles, those orchestrated family meetings, was only the surface of something much darker? What if, behind the glossy veneer of reality television, a storm had been gathering, so fierce and so deliberate that it threatened to destroy the family from within? Tonight, we pull back the curtain. Tonight, we delve into what insiders are calling the greatest scandal in the Brown family's history. This isn't just about petty arguments or marital rifts. This is about money, power, manipulation, and a reckoning that could only ever end in one place: a court of law. So if you believe that truth is stranger than fiction, and with this family, it always is, then do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to Starspill USA, and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you will not want to miss a single word of what I'm about to share. Now crew, let's get straight into it. For months, indeed years, whispers have been swirling. The cracks in the Brown family's facade have become impossible to ignore. From strained conversations on camera to leaked comments and cryptic posts online. Fans have long suspected that the story we were shown was not the full truth, but the scandal I am about to unravel, based on testimony from sources close to the family and a careful study of the available evidence, is far more shocking than any of us could have imagined. To understand the legal firestorm looming over Kody Brown and his legal wife Robyn, we must return to the beginning of the end. Because this story does not begin with one explosive event. It begins with a pattern, a slow, creeping consolidation of power. It was not merely emotional control, though. That, as we shall see, played its part. It was financial control. Control so absolute and so carefully constructed that it gradually left the other wives isolated, both emotionally and economically, until they had no choice but to fight back. Over the years, fans often noticed Kody's increasingly lopsided travel schedule. He seemed to spend more and more time with Robyn and her children, while visits to his other wives and their households dwindled. At the time, many put this down to laziness, favoritism, or simple neglect. But according to those close to the family, it was not neglect, it was strategy. Tony Podron, husband to Michael T., once observed with brutal honesty that Robyn placed, quote, "a lot of pressure and guilt on Kody whenever he traveled." Those words, simple as they may sound, cut to the heart of the dynamic. This wasn't partnership, it was manipulation. Every trip away was framed as a betrayal. Every moment Kody spent with his other wives became a source of guilt. And so he stayed where Robyn could see him, influence him, and control him. The cost of this? Broken relationships with his children. Look, for instance, at Truly Christine's youngest daughter. A little girl whose father drifted further and further away until their meetings became rare. Awkward and cold, more like an obligation than the love of a parent. But emotional control was only one part of the story. The other half, and perhaps the most damning, was the question of money. It was Michael T., one of Kody's most outspoken children, who laid this bare. She revealed what fans had long suspected, that Kody poured family resources into his dream project, Coyote Pass, whilst neglecting the basic needs of his children. Who paid for Isabel's vital spinal surgery? Not Kody, but Christine, who was forced to sell her own belongings online to raise the funds. Who provided for college, for cars, for everyday essentials? Not Kody, but the mothers, who juggled work and side hustles to make ends meet. Meanwhile, the shared family earnings, particularly the income from TLC, were funneled into a central account. An account that, according to Janelle, had one major problem. It had a massive leak. And then came the moment that many insiders believe was the final straw. Valentine's Day, Kody presented Robyn's youngest daughter, Ariella, with an extravagant vanity table. A grand, over-the-top gift designed to make her feel like a princess. For Robyn's household, it was a gesture of love. For the rest of the family, it was a slap in the face. Myselti's reaction was blistering. She reminded the world that when money had flowed into Kody's hands before, her sisters were lucky to receive a box of chocolates. Isabel, the daughter he'd barely supported, perhaps not even a card. Truly, barely a phone call. The vanity was no simple gift. It was a symbol. A message written in wood and glass: loyalty is rewarded, dissent is punished. Your value as a child depends on your mother's obedience. And it was this act, petty on the surface but devastating in its implications, that finally sparked the reckoning. Janelle, the quiet accountant of the family, had already begun to grow suspicious. She had always been careful with money, managing her own household finances with diligence. But when it came to the collective family fund, the infamous Dabsark LLC, things didn't add up. How, she wondered, could Kody and Robyn claim they were drowning in debt while simultaneously affording $1 million home, a nanny, designer shopping trips, and gifts fit for royalty? So Janelle began to dig. At first, she asked questions politely. She was brushed off. Kody blustered about his authority as patriarch. Robyn cried, accusing her of creating division. But Janelle was not fooled. She dug deeper. She requested records. She traced accounts. And slowly, she began to uncover the truth. New LLCs, unexplained transfers, hidden accounts where the names on the paperwork belonged only to Kody and Robyn. She realized, with sickening clarity, that the money she and the other wives had earned their TLC checks, their side hustles, even contributions from their children, was being siphoned away. And so Janelle, together with Christine, and to the surprise of many, Mary, decided the time for silence had ended. No more tears in living rooms. No more staged family meetings. It was time for a confrontation. And when that confrontation came, it was not in the cozy surroundings of a family home. It was in a cold, sterile conference room, a long polished table, harsh fluorescent lighting, no escape routes. On one side, Janelle, Christine, and Mary papers, bank records, and a determination carved into their faces. On the other, Kody and Robyn, unprepared for the reckoning awaiting them. This was no family meeting. This was an ambush, an audit. A declaration of war. A declaration of war. The conference room was silent at first, save for the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Janelle, Christine, and Mary sat with steely composure, their binders brimming with spreadsheets, bank statements, and documents painstakingly gathered over months of quiet investigation. They were no longer the women the cameras had portrayed, the gentle, compliant wives who bent to Kody's will. Today, they were a united front, armed with facts and determination. Kody entered first, his shoulders squared, a mask of authority in place. Robyn followed, attempting a serene composure, though the slight tremble in her hands betrayed nerves. They expected another routine discussion, a tearful negotiation, perhaps a subtle plea for forgiveness. They were wrong. Janelle spoke first, her voice calm but lethal in its precision. Kody, Robyn, we need you to explain these transactions, these transfers, and this LLC you formed without our knowledge. We are owed an explanation. Robyn's voice rose immediately, sharp and defensive. What is this? Are you accusing us of something? We are a family. We have sacrificed everything to keep this family together. Christine leaned forward, her gaze icy. Sacrifice. Tell me, Robyn, how is it sacrifice when my daughter Isabel had to beg strangers online for money to pay for her spinal surgery? Tell me how it was sacrifice when Truly barely saw his father because he was too busy building Robyn's empire. Janelle tapped the thick binder in front of her. These are not feelings. These are facts. Records show repeated diversions of funds from the Dabsark LLC into accounts you controlled. Assets purchased under your name. Expenses claimed as family necessities that were in fact personal luxury. This is not oversight. This is theft. Kody slammed his hand on the polished table. Enough. You are trying to assassinate my character. I am the head of this family. I decide how to use our money to protect everyone. We did nothing wrong. Robyn, sensing the escalating fury, attempted damage control. Tears streamed down her face as she wove her familiar defense. "We did it for the little children. Salma and Ariella, they are so young. We had to protect them. We had to make sure they were secure because we did not know if the rest of you would stay." The words, meant to soften the attack, landed like poison. To Janelle, Christine, and Mary, this was the ultimate betrayal. The protection of children argument was a shield to justify financial manipulation, neglect, and inequality, while Robyn and Kody built a private fortune. The other children were left to navigate hardship. The confrontation ended not with reconciliation, but with the women standing, collecting their binders and walking out, leaving Kody and Robyn surrounded by the ruins of their deceit. The family, as they knew it, was broken. It was only the beginning. Months later, the matter escalated into the courtroom. The atmosphere was tense, charged with anticipation. Reporters and fans lined the gallery, their eyes fixed on every movement. Cameras clicked, scribbled notes, filled pages, and a hush fell as the judge entered. Kody and Robyn appeared before the bench, their composure strained, faces a mixture of indignation and unease. Across from them, Janelle, Christine, and Mary presented themselves not as victims, but as plaintiffs ready to reclaim what had been wrongfully taken. The first testimony came from Janelle, whose voice was steady, every word precise. "Your Honor, for years, funds from the family pot were diverted into accounts controlled solely by Kody and Robyn, while I lived in an RV with my children. Observing them struggle, money was used for luxury purchases, a nanny, and properties that excluded our families. We were led to believe there was nothing left, yet the records tell a different story." Gasps echoed in the courtroom. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, are you aware of these allegations? Do you deny them?" Kody attempted to respond, voice rising with forced authority. "This is an attack on my character. I am the patriarch. I decide how best to manage the family's finances." The judge's reply was cutting. A patriarch does not enrich himself at the expense of the family he claims to lead. Facts, not feelings, will determine the outcome. Christine then took the stand, recounting her struggles in vivid detail. "We contributed our earnings, our TLC income, and our labor to the family pot. Yet when our children needed us, Isabel, truly, Savannah, we were left to fend for ourselves. Kody and Robyn benefited from these contributions while denying us basic support." Robyn's tears continued, but this time, they did little to mask the scrutiny of legal experts, accountants, and the judge. The evidence was overwhelming. Dobsark LLC transactions, the newly formed KSW Products LLC, and personal assets acquired while other children were neglected. The courtroom was not merely witnessing family drama. It was witnessing the dismantling of an empire built on secrecy, emotional manipulation, and financial deception. Legal claims were outlined with clarity. Breach of fiduciary duty. Kody had a legal obligation to act transparently and for the benefit of all partners. Instead, he secretly diverted funds to Robyn. Fraudulent conveyance assets were moved to shield them from rightful claimants. Unjust enrichment. Kody and Robyn benefited at the expense of the other wives and children. Civil conspiracy. Both parties collaborated to achieve unlawful financial gains. Partition and sale of property, particularly regarding Coyote Pass, where unresolved disputes had left multiple wives financially tethered, while Kody maintained control. By the end of the first day, the courtroom was in upheaval. Witnesses, evidence, and testimonies had laid bare years of deception. Fans described it as a historic moment in reality television. The Brown family saga, stripped of pretense and exposed in raw legal truth. Exposed in raw legal truth. The courtroom was thick with tension, the air almost suffocating under the weight of anticipation. Lawyers shuffled documents, the judge adjusted his glasses, and Kody and Robyn sat side by side, visibly strained, each exchange under the unrelenting glare of scrutiny. Across from them, Janelle, Christine, and Mary sat with a quiet authority that seemed to fill the room. They were no longer the wives who had bent under years of manipulation. They were warriors of truth, armed with numbers, records, and a determination to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. The proceedings began with the presentation of forensic financial analysis. Expert accountants took the stand, tracing every transaction, every transfer, every dollar that had flowed from the central family account, the infamous Dabsark LLC. The results were staggering. One by one, the experts laid out the trail. Hidden transfers into KSW Products LLC, an account controlled solely by Robyn and Kody, through which thousands of dollars from the collective family funds were siphoned. Luxury purchases under the guise of family expenses, designer clothing, bespoke gifts, and home decor that bore no connection to the needs of the broader family. Disparity in child support evidence showing that children of the favored wife received lavish gifts and privileges, while children of other wives were left without essentials, medical care, or even basic attention. The room was silent, except for the faint scratching of pens and the quiet gasps from spectators. Each piece of evidence painted a picture of calculated deception, the long-term manipulation that extended far beyond what had ever been captured on television. Janelle took the stand once again, detailing the impact of these financial maneuvers. Her voice was steady, but there was a palpable undercurrent of pain. For years, we were made to believe that Kody's decisions were for the family's good. But the evidence shows that these decisions were designed to enrich one household while neglecting the rest. Children went without medical care. Futures were compromised. All so that Kody and Robyn could build a personal empire. Christine followed, recounting the personal toll. I had to start from scratch after realizing our funds were being diverted. My children, Truly and Isabel, suffered. We lived in minimal conditions while the other family lived in luxury. This was not accident. This was intentional. The judge listened attentively, occasionally jotting notes. His questions were pointed, cutting through Robyn's tearful defenses and Kody's attempted bluster. Mrs. Brown, Mr. Brown, the judge said, his voice calm but firm, you claim that these actions were to protect the little children. Yet, the evidence presented shows systematic diversion of funds from other children who also relied on these resources. How do you justify this disparity? Robyn attempted to speak, but her words faltered. We did not want the children to suffer if there was a collapse. We had to ensure Selman and Ariella's security. The judge's gaze did not waver. And what of Isabel, Truly, Savannah, Garrison, Gabriel? Did their security not matter? A silence fell over the courtroom. The audience could feel the tension almost physically. Kody's mouth opened, closed, and opened again. Yet no satisfactory response came. Next came the children's perspective, not through direct testimony in court, but through documented statements and affidavits which laid bare the emotional cost of the financial manipulation. Isabel's mother detailed how she had begged strangers for funds to pay for her daughter's life-changing surgery. Truly's intermittent contact with Kody was framed as visitation rather than the nurturing presence of a father. Savannah's life in a trailer, juxtaposed with Robyn's mansion, was presented not as coincidence but as evidence of gross inequity. Garrison and Gabriel's contributions to the family fund, which were ignored or redirected, underscored a betrayal of trust and expectation. Every statement reinforced the notion that this was no ordinary family dispute. It was a calculated multi-year financial and emotional deception executed at the expense of children and co-wives alike. The legal team representing Janelle, Christine, and Mary laid out the 5 core claims with precision. Breach of fiduciary duty. Kody, as the manager of the family finances, failed in his obligation to act for the benefit of all partners. Fraudulent conveyance, funds and assets were shifted to avoid accountability. Unjust enrichment, Kody and Robyn benefited at the expense of the other wives and children. Civil conspiracy, both were complicit in a deliberate plan to divert resources. Partition and sale of property, especially regarding Coyote Pass, a symbol of broken promises and financial hostage-taking. As the case progressed, the courtroom became electric. Spectators whispered, journalists scribbled feverishly, and social media exploded. Hashtags like #BrownFamilyExposed and #JusticeForTheKids began trending internationally. Fans who had followed the Browns for years were witnessing the collapse of the very narrative TLC had constructed. Kody and Robyn, once confident in their authority, were visibly fraying under scrutiny. Robyn's defenses increasingly relied on emotion and tears, while Kody's bluster grew more desperate and brittle. Each attempt to justify or excuse their actions was systematically dismantled by evidence, legal arguments, and testimony. By the end of Part 3, it was clear. This was not a simple domestic dispute. It was a calculated financial takedown, a meticulous uncovering of deceit, and a fight for justice that went far beyond any reality show narrative. The Brown family empire, once presented as an ideal of plural marriage and faith, was exposed as a structure built on secrecy, manipulation, and betrayal. And yet, the climax had not yet arrived. The final battle, the presentation of remaining evidence. The expert testimonies on LLCs and diverted funds, and the judge's ruling on partitioning Coyote Pass was still to come. The moment the Brown family had long dreaded had arrived. The court was ready to deliver a ruling that would strip away the carefully constructed illusions of Kody and Robyn, exposing the depth of financial mismanagement and emotional manipulation that had long simmered behind closed doors. The proceeds from the case, as the court ordered, would be divided equitably among the owners, entirely free from Kody's unilateral control, for Christine, Janelle, and Mary. This was not merely a financial victory, it was a long-awaited reclamation of their contributions and a liquidation of their largest shared asset. Coyote Pass. Beyond the financial aspects, the plaintiffs had pursued intentional infliction of emotional distress, arguably the most personal and painful claim of all. This allegation went far beyond money. It claimed that Kody and Robyn's actions were so extreme and calculated that they had deliberately caused severe emotional suffering to the other wives and their children. The lawsuit detailed years of psychological manipulation, gaslighting, public humiliation on the show, and blatant neglect. Central to this claim, sources revealed, was Isabel's surgery. Kody's refusal to accompany his daughter for her life-changing operation, citing COVID protocols while prioritizing social commitments with Robyn, was presented as a deliberate act of cruelty designed to punish Christine. The claim argued that this was not poor parenting, it was strategic emotional harm, leaving profound and lasting trauma for both mother and child. Expert legal analysts explained that this case was far from a typical marital dispute. It was never filed in family court. Instead, it functioned as a corporate dissolution lawsuit masquerading as a family dispute. By framing the Browns' plural marriage as a de facto business partnership, the legal team avoided messy, emotional arguments and relied instead on the precise, provable language of business law, contracts, fiduciary duties, asset allocation, and fraud. Dobsark Entertainment LLC, the central entity, was depicted not as a mere name on paper, but as the legal core of Brown Family Incorporated, with Kody and Robyn acting as self-appointed CEO and coup, according to the suit. Their decisions had run the corporation into the ground through greed and mismanagement, leaving the other three founding partners with no choice but to sue for dissolution and restitution. This strategic framing was it stripped Kody of his patriarchal authority, casting him instead as a corrupt, failed CEO. Robyn, likewise, lost her damsel in distress narrative, now portrayed as an active, white-collar co-conspirator. With these lines drawn, the court was prepared for a drama far more intense than any television episode could convey. The trial itself took place in a modern, sterile county courthouse, yet the tension was anything but clinical. Observers described the atmosphere as so thick one could almost cut it with a knife. There were no producers, no retakes, no curated sound bites. This was real life with genuine consequences. On one side sat the plaintiffs, Christine, Janelle, and Mary. Their appearance was striking professional. Understated business attire replaced the casual, tearful image of wives audiences had watched for years. They were composed, their faces set with a grim determination. These were no longer wives pleading for fairness. They were litigants, determined to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. Across the room, Kody and Robyn presented a stark contrast. Kody's leg bounced nervously, his face flushed with anger and disbelief. The suit he wore appeared ill-fitting, a costume for a role he was ill-prepared to perform. Robyn, clutching a tissue, appeared vulnerable, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Yet attentive observers noted a calculating glint that betrayed her soft exterior. Together, they sat like an isolated island under the court's scrutiny. The plaintiff's legal team, led by the formidable Ms. Albright, launched their case with methodical precision. No emotional pleas. No melodrama. Instead, a mountain of evidence was presented, building a fortress of proof, brick by meticulous brick. Hours were spent projecting curated clips from over a decade of sister wives. Not the smiling family moments, but damning admissions that showcased Kody's self-declared authority over family finances. Exhibit A14, Kody. Season 14, Episode 8, I make the ultimate decisions. It's a patriarchy. I'm the head of this family, and what I say goes. Exhibit A15, Kody. Season 16, am I the only one who's worried about the wolf at the door? We are broke. We are drowning. Double quotes Ms. Albright highlighted the glaring contradictions. Kody publicly claimed poverty, yet privately controlled large sums of money for personal use. The strategy was devastatingly effective. By establishing Kody's role as fiduciary, they could demonstrate precisely how he had violated his duties. Next came the financial evidence, presented through large, intricate flowcharts. One chart, Dabzark income distribution, showed TLC earnings and wives' contributions flowing into the central LLC account. Another, asset diversion 2018 to 2022, revealed a web of red arrows illustrating hundreds of thousands of dollars siphoned away from Christine, Janelle, and Mary. These funds did not reach their intended households. Instead, all arrows pointed to two recipients: Robyn's Flagstaff home and KSW Products LLC. Bank statements corroborated the transfers, with highlighted lines showing vast sums labeled as household expenses or reimbursements. Yet the amounts, $50,000 here, $75,000 there, were far beyond ordinary household spending. This was not mismanagement. It was systematic financial manipulation. Alongside the charts, the plaintiffs presented emotional testimonies. Christine recounted Isabel's surgery and the anguish of financial and emotional neglect. Janelle spoke of raising her children with minimal support while contributing to the central pot. Mary detailed years of psychological pressure and the sense of betrayal endured by her family. The courtroom saw the human cost of Kody and Robyn's actions laid bare, a vivid portrayal of emotional devastation married to financial wrongdoing. By the end of the first session, the message was unmistakable. The Brown family's polished facade had crumbled. This was no longer reality television. It was a courtroom drama of real stakes, exposing lies, financial deception, and the consequences of manipulation. After painstakingly establishing the financial foundation of their case, Ms. Albright shifted the courtroom's focus to the human toll, revealing the devastating emotional consequences of Kody and Robyn's actions over decades. A period defined by manipulation, neglect, and profound betrayal. The cold, impersonal numbers were no longer just figures on a page. They were transformed into living, breathing testimonies that illustrated the psychological and emotional abuse inflicted upon the plaintiffs and their children. Janelle was the first to take the stand. Her voice was calm, precise, and measured. Yet beneath that exterior lay a current of pain that could not be entirely suppressed. She described in painstaking detail the summer of 2021, living in a cramped, sometimes waterless RV on undeveloped land at Coyote Pass. Forced into such dire circumstances because her financial contributions to the family enterprise had been withheld or diverted, leaving her incapable of securing alternative accommodation. Meanwhile, Kody and Robyn resided in the luxurious Flagstaff property, purchased at nearly $1 million, raising their 5 children in comfort. a stark and humiliating juxtaposition that vividly illustrated the inequity at the heart of the plaintiff's claims. This was not mere mismanagement. This was strategic deprivation. A pattern of calculated financial control designed to centralize power and consolidate privilege for themselves, at the expense of the other wives, exposing a carefully cultivated hypocrisy that had persisted for decades. Christine's testimony was even more harrowing, exposing the raw emotional cost of Kody's and Robyn's cruelty. She described the excruciating suffering of her daughter, Isabel, who lived with a severe spinal curvature of over 50 degrees, a condition that caused chronic pain, disrupted sleep, and difficulty breathing, making every day a battle just to endure. Christine's composure, carefully maintained for years, faltered momentarily as she recounted her desperate attempts to secure a life-altering surgery for Isabel, only for her father to refuse to accompany her under the pretext of COVID-19 protocols. Despite the surgery taking place during a time when travel for social engagements and non-essential activities, which he freely undertook, was still occurring, weeks later, both Kody and Robyn attended an out-of-state wedding, a fact substantiated with social media records presented as Exhibit C42, revealing a chilling prioritization of personal leisure over a child's life-altering medical needs. Christine was forced to raise the funds herself, navigate the logistical nightmare of her daughter's surgery, and support Isabel's terrified, vulnerable emotional state entirely on her own. In that courtroom, every spectator could feel the weight of injustice, as the narrative of a supposedly caring father and protective stepmother crumbled under the glare of unassailable evidence, highlighting the malicious intentionality behind their decisions and the profound, lasting trauma inflicted on both mother and child. The defense, when allowed to present their case, descended into a chaotic mixture of denial, deflection, and victim playing. Kody, taking the stand with an air of arrogance and combative energy, insisted he had worked tirelessly for the family for decades and that his intentions were misunderstood, claiming that all financial decisions were necessary sacrifices to keep the family afloat. Yet under Ms. Albright's methodical cross-examination, his carefully constructed narrative unraveled. Bank statements from KSW Products LLC, a private company co-owned with Robyn, revealed extravagant expenditures on luxury watches, high-end kitchen appliances, crystal goblets, and other items completely unrelated to family necessities, exposing a deliberate misuse of funds. The courtroom watched in disbelief as Kody's claims of poverty collided with evidence of lavish spending, a juxtaposition that laid bare the duplicity at the heart of his financial stewardship. Robyn's testimony was equally damaging. She attempted to portray herself as a naive, obedient wife who was unaware of the intricate financial machinations, crying throughout her direct examination as she insisted she merely followed her husband's instructions. However, the facade quickly collapsed under Ms. Albright's relentless cross-examination, which highlighted Robyn's signature on incorporation documents, her role as a co-founder of My Sister Wife's Closet, and her position as managing member of KSW Products LLC. The damning revelation came from the testimony of Mindy Jessup, Robyn's step-niece and longtime nanny, who confirmed that Robyn had orchestrated a secret financial strategy, creating a secondary LLC to divert funds and ensure a private nest egg, using COVID-19 restrictions as a manipulative tool to isolate Kody from the other wives and children, centralizing influence and consolidating power. Mindy's account provided the ultimate insider perspective, confirming that these were not isolated incidents of poor judgment, but deliberate, calculated acts designed to enrich the defendants while subjugating the other wives and trolling the family's emotional and financial ecosystem. Judge Eleanor Vance, presiding over the case with unflinching authority and a commanding presence, delivered a verdict that was both absolute and devastating. Her ruling did not mince words. Kody was condemned for his parasitic exploitation of the very women to whom he owed fiduciary responsibility, while Robyn was exposed as a calculating co-conspirator who weaponized familial loyalty and emotional bonds for personal gain. The judgment ordered the immediate dissolution of Dabsark Entertainment LLC and KSW Products LLC, freezing of all assets and repayment of $1.5 million as a conservative estimate of misappropriated funds, pending a final forensic accounting. Moreover, the judge established a trust to allocate 50% of all future sister wives' earnings for the benefit of the original 13 children, directly counteracting the defendant's history of favoritism. An additional $500,000 in damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress was awarded to Christine, recognizing the calculated cruelty inflicted upon Isabel during her critical surgery. Ensuring the legal consequences matched the severity of the harm caused, the fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Kody and Robyn were financially decimated, their carefully curated television image shattered, and their ability to profit or control the narrative completely curtailed. Meanwhile, Christine, Janelle, and Mary emerged vindicated, having reclaimed not just financial control, but the moral high ground, dignity, and authority over their own lives. They left the courthouse as triumphant figures, symbols of resilience and collective empowerment, demonstrating that truth, solidarity, and courage could dismantle even the most entrenched systems of manipulation and greed. This story, far beyond the scope of a reality television narrative, serves as a cautionary tale about trust, accountability, and the dangers of unchecked power, while simultaneously celebrating the triumph of those who, through determination and unity, rose above decades of oppression to secure justice for themselves and their children, proving that no amount of manipulation, deceit, or favoritism can suppress the enduring strength of truth and familial loyalty.